Hi, Jane.
Hi, Bach.
Welcome, everyone. If you know anything about organic intelligence, you know that there's a saying that orientation is everything. Or if you didn't know that saying, you at least know about orientation and its connection to the environment through the five senses: seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, and tasting. And today we are going to spotlight hearing, all things auditory orientation, with my guest, Dr. Jane Rigler, trained in organic intelligence, retired professor of music. She's a composer, a flutist, and specializes in an approach called deep listening, which we'll learn more about. She's here to have a free flow chat with me, unplanned, messy, fun, exploratory, on auditory orientation. So, to my audience, if you don't know what hearing is and you've always wanted to know what hearing is, you will now learn what hearing is. Okay, strap in. Jane, thanks for being here. I'm excited about this.
Oh gosh, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super excited to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Jane, I've heard that there's this thing called hearing. I thought there was only seeing. So, what is hearing?
Well, there's hearing and there's listening.
Dang.
And hearing is the process that the body has in which our ears that are shaped very strategically receive vibrations through the air. Well, in this case, the air, you can also listen or hear underwater, but in this case, we'll talk about air being propagated, like sound waves being propagated in the air. And they're captured by our ear lobes here. And then the sound waves go into and hit different the eardrum, which is called a drum. It kind of almost looks like one, and it vibrates. And then it activates these three different bones, the really tiny little bones in our ear, in our inner ear. And those vibrations are then transmitted to this sort of spiral shaped cochlea, which has little tiny hairs. And then those little hairs receive as electrical and transmit it and translate everything into electrical signals that our brain then receives. And then these signals, which are transmitted along our auditory nerves, they receive them and then they're interpreted. The sounds are interpreted by other cells, by other signals, by the body. And then these interpretations then become complex procedure, then goes into other parts of us where we then go into meaning and interpretation and physical feeling and sensation and all of those elements that we talk about in organic intelligence and other places, right? So there's the there's the act of hearing, and for anyone who is hard of hearing or for the deaf, they receive their trans being the vibrations, these sound vibrations, are being translated in other ways through the body. There's bone conduction, there's vibration through the feet, through the hands, through the body, through the skin, in other ways, right? That then get interpreted in other ways and sensed.
Okay.
Okay. And then there's and then there's listening.
Can I pause you there
Yeah.
and say a few things and then we'll get back to um
Yeah.
first, that's all I want to explore that all of that. quickly to the audience, I felt the impulse to say what I hope the audience will get from this chat, even though we just began. In my mind, it's explore hearing, learn about it. It could be technical, it could be practical. I do hope the audience comes away with more attention on hearing in general, which might motivate your auditory orientation practice automatically and easily. You just may notice you'll hear more. And then we may get also refined practical tips from Jane, depending on how the conversation goes on hearing and listening. So just that's just by way of why I'm doing this. Um,
Yeah.
thank you. So hearing, uh, I asked her what hearing is. She introduced two concepts, hearing and listening, and you gave a technical story of what happens during listening.
No,
And
during hearing. During
sorry.
hearing.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Oh, wow, your
Mhm.
hearing and listening are spot on. You caught me on my mistake. No, just kidding. um, and one thing that came up when you were explaining hearing is, as you're explaining it, it seems intimately connected to physical sensation. So the one issue is the connection between hearing and physical sensation. Another is automatic meaning making of what is heard. And I know you haven't even gotten into listening yet. I'm just naming things that are in my constellation here.
Sure.
Um, and another thing in in my mind is, from what you described as hearing, that would be the technical auditory orientation. Oh, Jane, I'm getting too complex. I'm sorry if I'm getting too complex. So one thing I'm wondering already is this distinction between, maybe I should just shut up and just let you continue. Let me just do a little bit more. There's this hearing versus listening, right? Which you're gonna get into, and then
Yeah.
I'm now wondering: is there a similar distinction in the other four senses, which I'm not going to demand that you have an answer to, but it's in my mind.
Sure.
Uh, and then is all hearing voluntary or involuntary? And okay, I'm going to stop there and just that's my immediate reaction to your opening.
What
So,
I just said. Yeah, that's deep, man. You're deep. You're a
okay,
deep thinker.
so but you can feel free to go with what you had planned or something from what I just said. So you're free to, yeah.
Well, there's so many interconnected answers to all of what you
Mm.
just said. So one that caught my attention was this, you kind of said it fleetingly quickly, but you talked about automatically, like the kind of things just happen on a physical sense. And then you said something about automatic hearing, which I understood it as the way you said it was something about automatically kind of understanding or automatically kind of sensing something, like an interpretation almost happening immediately. Is that what
Yeah,
you meant
so
by automatic hearing?
I maybe let me
Okay.
I'll riff right now. So
Hmm.
as I'm speaking to you, you're hearing sounds from me, uh, and it's simultaneous with knowing what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
dinosaurs are back and they're all green. You heard that, and then but you knew it wasn't just sound. Did I ask you what sound is? Oh, is what is sound a worthy question here? Is it the same question? Ugh. Oh my God, it's too much, Jane. Okay, so I'm making sound, you're hearing it, and you're understanding. You're processing. You're getting more than just sound. You're understanding words. So
Okay.
okay,
So there's a lot here already. So what
okay.
I'm going to do is, yes, because there's several kinds of, well, Michel Chion wrote about the three modes of listening, and you can look this up online. I don't want to go over all three modes of listening, but I will say that semantic listening is one of them. So this idea of language and linguistic interpretation in a message is a kind of a listening mode. Um, he also calls casual listening, which is just, you are just sort of these are sort of these different levels of identifying sounds, right? And knowing the difference between when you pick up the phone and the very first word someone says, you know who they are, right? Like this kind of identification of casual identification. And then there's reduced listening, which we are going to get into. We are going to talk about what he calls reduced listening, what others call acousmatic listening. And it's what you and I are sort of going to be referring to as non, wait, as non-conceptual hearing, I think, or listening. So we're not, yeah. So anyway, conceptual, non-conceptual, we're just going to put all of that on the side right now. And we're just going to talk right now about the difference between hearing and listening.
Okay, may I, I won't, I don't think I'm going to sabotage you. Okay, so just to make sure I'm following you, we are going to set aside my question about words and understanding words, and that's the semantic. We're going to set that aside for now. Okay, I, I do want to so you're going to get to listening. Are you able just to give me to repeat the quick statement of what is hearing and possibly what is sound? If there's a quick one line for each, is that possible? And then get into
Yeah, so sound is the of how do I say this? There's probably really great online some like definitions
I feel
like
like
great.
I don't want to control you too much. So maybe you can ignore what I'm doing and do what you want if you want. Because
Yeah, no, it's fine.
okay.
Sounds are air are frequency air waves that happen, each one with a variety of tone, pitch, amplitude, dynamic range. It all depends. Sounds travel through the air, and they are um, compressing and contraction, and they are waveforms that are happening in the air that happen in the air, and they bounce off of things. That's why we hear differently when we're in one kind of room that's made of glass, or so they're attract they sounds interact with the world around them, right? They're either absorbed or they're refracting or reflecting off of the world around them, the other objects, right? And hearing happens in our bodies, and the way that we hear happens in an automatic way. We don't necessarily, you know how sometimes you can be in a place and not really notice something, right? You notice a sound. When I say something, I mean a sound.
Okay.
Um, because we're not listening. We might be listening to someone speak to you in a noisy room, and you're listening to the sound of their voice, and you're focusing and honing in on their voice. And so you're listening, but you may be hearing a lot of things around you, but you might not be paying attention to them. So the difference between hearing and listening is that fine line between what you are paying attention to and what is just kind of happening automatically. You may be hearing people speaking, but not necessarily listening or understanding or comprehending what they're saying. But you may hear words in a language and blah, 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 right? You might
Yep.
hear things. You might even be able to hear and listen and hear certain words that come out that you're, oh, they said my name. And then you're then that might be this sort of automatic hearing because you're hearing things that you might recognize, right? If you're in another
Okay.
country and you're hearing only another language that you are unfamiliar with, your hearing and your listening is going to be attracted to that which sounds familiar, right? Because of your culture and your language and your experience and your everything. So there's different kinds of listening. Listening that which is what we are paying attention to. And when you mentioned the other senses, there is a difference between listening and looking and seeing. You might be looking at something, but not really seeing it. You might not be really. noticing and paying attention to what it is that you're looking at. So and so probably with
Okay.
taste, there's the same thing, and maybe with touch, the same. So I think that there's these gradients, the gradient of how we are living with our senses. That has to do with our attention, our presence, being in this moment now, and how are we
Mm.
attending to through attending to the world, to the object of our attention through our senses. Could be smell. It could be, so
Okay.
there, you can smell something, but really taking in the fragrance and really, and then so there's all these gradient ways. And so with listening, there is all of these gradient ways of perceiving, of being in the environment through our listening body. Right. That does have to do with, of course, our experience and our culture and our language and our the way we were brought up, our belief systems. All of this is part of our listening, our very unique, each person's very, very unique listening experience. Right. And so it's important to me that we explore how the quality, our listening biases as well, but our quality of listening.
Okay, thank you. Hearing is automatic, involuntary registering of sound.
Hmm.
List, if I'm getting you, okay, so you nodded or you said, thank you. Uh, uh, Listening is a, a paying attention to sound, and that is opening us up now to your getting very detailed about listening and its nature and different forms and different aspects of listening. That's where we are. Yeah. Okay. So, go, okay. So please continue with what is most important. You mentioned many different things, biases in listening, how what we listen to is shaped by factors X, Y, Z. So whatever is coming up by way of interest to you right now or pleasure. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. So, one question that comes up is, why is this even important to us? Why we live in such a visual world, culturally speaking, at this time in human evolution, sight. And all the words that we use for living in the world are around sight. Even the word imagine is around image and imaging and what we
Oh,
see in our mind's eye, right? And so, how do we realign? How do we use, maybe this is another way of saying it is, how do we utilize and incorporate listening as yet another way, one of many, that we can use to grow, um, some might say even heal, some might say develop our capacity, right, to enjoy, to find pleasure. How do we incorporate and develop listening as a resource, right?
yes, I want you to continue and I want answers to exactly that. So please, yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. So, in my practice of deep listening, which maybe I should talk about what that is first, and then I can go into the why. Yeah, maybe
Yes.
I'll do that. So what is deep listening? So I learned about a composer back in the late 80s, when I was an undergraduate actually at Northwestern. I learned about a composer named Pauline Oliveros, who was one of very few women in the electronic music field at the time. And I didn't know of any women composers hardly at all. And didn't even know anyone could be a woman could be a composer. So she really stuck out like in electronic music, and she's a composer. Um, and later I learned and met her when I was studying at UC San Diego for my master's and PhD. And she invited us all into her world of what she called deep listening. And she practiced and studied and developed this deep listening. She developed it with two other women, and they called it the Deep Listening Institute for many, many, many years, from like the 80s or even earlier, actually, to when she passed away in 2016. And even in 2016, in her 80s, people would ask her, okay, interviews, what is deep listening? And she spent her whole life, and she would say, I don't know. So there was no dogmatic practice of how it was supposed to be. So I'm just going
Mm,
to start with that.
yeah.
It arose out of this question of, how are we listening? What are we keeping out of our listen? What are our listening biases? Why do we have them? And why is it important to be listening with the whole body and incorporating all of the senses and the whole body as a kind of listening tool in a sense?
A quick interruption. If you could give examples, that would be nice. But please continue free flow, but I just want to
Mhm.
nudge a little bit with examples if
Sure.
possible, when possible for you. Okay.
Yeah, so an example um, of an example, a story of Pauline was when she first got an electronic device to record the environment, a little tape recorder. And she recorded her environment, and it was in Texas, I think, at the time, and she was just recording nature sounds. She went back to listen to the recording, and she heard a lot more than she actually thought she heard. Like a lot more got recorded than what she thought she heard. She was like, wait a minute, I don't remember hearing that truck go by, or I don't remember that bird sound. Like, what? Wait a minute, what am I not listening to? And so she developed this practice of like, how do we listen more and more and more? So she developed, she would hold these retreats for all people of any ability. And she invited a dreamer, a therapist, and she's a playwright, a poet, and a writer, and a dream therapist named Ione. And Ione would ask people, what do your dreams sound like?
What do your dreams sound like? Okay.
And then Eloise Gold was also invited. And Eloise is a Tai Chi master, choreographer, dancer. And Eloise asks, how is our body listening?
No, thank you. And please continue with all that. And the person being asked examples of what they did or how they were prior, then how did they respond to the question, what happened in their hearing, listening, body, etc. Please.
So when I met Ione, and I met Ione many years after let's just put it this way. At one point, Ione asked me, what do your dreams sound like? And I got very defensive. I was like, I don't know. I don't have any dreams. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any sound in my dreams. I don't know what I just was like, I got really nervous. I was like, I don't know. What are you talking about? I don't have any. I got really sort of, it felt like I suddenly got this in this vulnerable space, and I was like, I don't, ugh.
Mm.
And immediately, well, not immediately, little by little, actually, the opposite of immediately, very gradually, I began to be involved in more deep listening practices, and I got into the training. And I realized that this way of approaching listening is best approached without a judging mind, without judgment, without thinking that you're doing it wrong, without all of the analysis. even without dream analysis. So when Ione does dreaming and what are the sounds of your dreams, she doesn't, there's no intention to analyze dreams or try to even interpret them. It's more about creating a shared, safe dream community where people can discuss their dreams in very playful ways and express their dreams and be given the autonomy to empower themselves to transform their dreams if they so wish. So that is another part of the deep listening. Another part of the deep listening is the listening to our bodies, both the internal mind, body. Oh, my mind is going a mile an hour and I'm thinking a lot of things. And also the internal, like, oh, there's my stomach growling, or oh, my knee just cracked, or whatever, right? Though there's internal listening, and then there's the listening to the body, to listening through the body. If I were to listen through my heart or with my heart, what would that mean? If I were to listen with my spine, to my spine, with my spine, through my spine, what does that feel like? And so there becomes this somatic experiencing of listening that becomes physicalized in a whole other way. Again, without judgment, there's no right or wrong. It's a play. And a lot of this is about playfulness, imagination, and wonder and curiosity, right?
May I ask questions as they come
Sure.
up?
Please.
Um, Thank you. One question that came up for me is, when are you using listening literally, when figuratively, or are you always using it literally in this context? So when you talk about listen to what your mind is doing, the thoughts, listen from your heart, from your spine, do you mean listening literally as in paying attention to sounds, or is it moving into another sense that's figurative or metaphorical or something like that?
I think for each person, it's going to be really unique and different about how one approaches this. And I think it could be changing constantly. Like it could be literal or figurative in any moment, switching back and forth. Like I think that one needs to take this in the way that feels right for them in that moment. So, you know, I might be facilitating a group of people and say, what does it feel like to listen with your spine or listen through the bottoms of your feet? And we
Oh,
might walk very, very slowly and feel what it feels like. And then something else might come up, and then another thing might emerge, and then it's something else. So I feel like there's not what a right way. I
sorry.
feel
Yeah.
like do this means that you're honing your attention in a very particular way. So there's focused listening and global listening. There could be a very focused listening, right? Where you're honing in. It's almost like a mixing board. Have you ever seen a mixing board that has channels and all these different channels? And you can have a mixing, you can have a focal listening where all the channels are down except for one. And you're just listening to the fan in the room
Okay.
and you're listening to that hum and the frequency and you're just feeling that hum. Or you can listen to the global and put all the channels up and hear everything and just take in whatever. It all is just this
Okay.
blurry sonic experience. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to continue on that exactly. And
Mhm.
could we imagine, I'm thinking of my audience. So people are in their rooms, in their homes, in their apartments. So let's say they're there in their room. If they wanted to DIY some of this, like what could you, so let's just assume it's a person in their room. What could you give advice and thoughts and possibilities for exploring listening or hearing here? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. One really great thing to do is with a pad of paper and a pencil or a pen, just start to write down And I do say write down with paper and pen rather than on a phone. Um, I say that on purpose. We can talk about that why. But I would say write down every single thing you hear. Just make a list of every single thing you hear. The from beginning close up to you to farther and farther and farther away. And just make a list. Just make a
Okay,
list.
so they're in bed or sitting on their couch and paper and pen, and then see and listen to the environment, or hear. So you can play with the audience. This person can play with not efforting or directing or not directing attention. They can play with that, right? Play with that, and then write down everything you hear slash listen hear listen to.
It's really funny because as soon as you start to pay attention to what you're hearing, you're actually listening.
Right. Right.
And if you're not efforting, but you're hearing something, you're probably also listening. You
That's
know,
the thing. Like,
it's a really interesting, like you're acknowledging this really like interesting place of where the boundaries are. And the boundary, there may not be really very clear boundaries at all. Like what you're pointing, I feel like you're pointing that out, maybe indirectly, but it's pretty cool.
yes.
It's pretty cool.
Um,
Yeah.
no, thank you. I will say that. So, briefly to touch on organic intelligence about what orientation is.
Hmm.
I mean, I've written and spoken a lot about it on my Substack on YouTube, and connection to the environment through the senses, ad nauseum. And as far as what it is exactly, and technically, um, I don't have the knowledge or articulateness right now, but in some moments, the founder, Steve Hoskinson, hi Steve, will talk about the most. I'm not. I'm not saying I'm representing him correctly because my knowledge here is very edge and vague, but orientation, if you want to get ultra technical, is something like the barest, most primitive, most automatic,
Mm.
unaffected by volition or effort or processing or something. And I'm
Okay.
already telling the audience I'm not sure exactly what I'm saying, so don't, you know, but it's some kind of bare seeing, bare hearing, bare touching, tasting, smelling that I don't talk about a lot in my work, in my YouTube or Substack, or maybe at all. I just say, look at the
Mhm.
beach, hear the birds, keep it simple, right? But if we're really getting technical, it's something that's very rarefied as the most basic seeing that may
Yeah.
happen for a split millisecond before something else comes in that dilutes it or something
Right.
like volition or effort. So all
Mhm.
that let me just repeat that what I said in the past 1 minute or so is very edge and at the edge of my knowledge, and I'm still trying to puzzle it out. But it came up as you were talking about, as you were reflecting my own talking about hearing versus listening.
Yeah.
Like, can you be at home is trying not to listen, but just to hear impossible, and doesn't that just move you into listening mode because you're having I'm going to try not to pay attention to my hearing. I'm just going to let the hearing happen. But if you're doing that, is it not really hearing exactly? So,
Mhm.
and then there's a question of, is there any practical point to what I'm saying? I'm not sure, but at least we're in this space of what exactly is the difference between hearing and listening. You were pinging that, right? Yeah.
I'm actually so intrigued by this low effort listening, this low effort hearing, and this because ah, it's hard to put into words, isn't it? Like
I
I'm just
find
hearing now this bird, and it's just so fascinating to me that it just came up. Like it's almost this hypnagogic, hypnopomic state of perception or like this low efforting or this low consciousness of coming out of a dream state or coming out or into a state of just holding ourselves where we are in this very moment and allowing this sense of the auditory sense to just be where it is. And in a way, I almost feel like this is related to this, what I mentioned before, this acousmatic or reduced listening.
Wait, before may because
Yeah, I
yeah,
want to go into that though. So
no,
it's
no, no,
something.
you will. I'm not. And you're allowed to fight back. So if I interrupt and then you're saying no, not right now, Bach, you can do that. But
Fine.
what is effort?
Mm,
So I'm interested too. I've been thinking about it a lot in my own work and my own. But when you say low effort listening,
mm.
I'm very wanting to. What is effort? What is low effort?
I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, I never even thought of it until I just said it. So this is like
I
a
mean,
whole new, it's like, wow, okay.
I mean, when I explain orientation, I often use the word effortless connection to the environment through the senses. And it's been an ongoing thinking task for me over months. What exactly do I mean by effortless whenever I use that term? What exactly do I mean by effort when I use that term?
Mhm.
I have some grasp, but not it. Uh, so, but hearing as you defined it is effortless. If it's automatic, it's effortless, right? That has to be true because it's
Mhm.
automatic. It's
Yeah.
like digestion, or I'm if you're
Yeah.
that's effortless.
Hmm.
Well, something could be demanding on the body, but that's a separate. It's effortless for your volition. You're digesting your lasagna, and it's automatic. That's effortless.
Hmm.
Sounds, you're registering sounds. That's effortless. Uh,
Hmm.
Now, what if you hear a barking dog that annoys you? Is that effortless? So you can go with that, or you can go with your
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I was just going to say if it's a sound that's that hurts or that has a terrible meaning attached to it. So yeah, I think that yeah, I think it all depends. Maybe for some people, lasagna will not be effortless to digest. So I think it just depends
Oh,
on
okay.
the system, the experience, the body, the association that we have, the meaning, all of those things will, I think, the effortlessness, will really depend again on each person's unique, body and system. And yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
crap. Okay. I do want you to continue with what you wanted to continue on. At one point, quickly, is I'm
Sure.
realizing now the distinction between what is volitional and not volitional, or chosen or not chosen, and the distinction between effortless and efforted.
Hmm.
Maybe that is becoming clear as those are two separate. Damn it. I don't want to. It's not really relevant to your topic, but let me just say, when I say lasagna digesting is effortless, I meant that there's no volition involved. At the same time, if you're gluten intolerant, dairy intolerant, and then you're getting all sorts of pain from lasagna, that's high effort digestion in the sense that it's really taxing on the organism. So taxing on the organism could mean it's not effortless, right? Because there's a lot of demand. That could be a sense of high effort, which is
Hmm.
different from when I refer to effort as in it requires volition.
Hmm.
But then when you use volition, it could be easier or not, or pleasant or not. So it could be effort. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop.
No, I think it's really great that
I
you're
mean,
making this
because it's
distinction.
getting more into my own intellectually trying to figure out these concepts under
Mhm.
genetic intelligence and philosophy. But it's getting away from our main thing, which is hearing and listening, which is why I'm a little bit self-conscious about just going on
Mhm.
my off on my own intellectual thing. But
Mhm.
okay, summarizing, what is effort? What is non-effort? That's a question worth exploring and thinking about. And back to Jane on hearing and listening.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so the different kinds of listening, one of them. is this what some have called acousmatic or reduced listening. And there's two sides to that as well, because some say that this reduced listening, which I will explain in a minute, is really important to do. It's a really important practice. And others on the other side say it's impossible to do. So what is it? Um, it's basically listening in a way that you're sort of hearing sounds, I will say hearing and listening in a way, both as a non-interpretive experience. Sounds become, you're not analyzing them, you're not concerned about the source of the sound, you're not labeling them, you're connecting to the sound as you would maybe as an object, as a physical object. So an example, acousmatic listening or reduced listening could be something like you're hearing this very low motor buzzing sound, metallic machine-like sound, and it's coming from above and it's moving from here to there and it's going pretty fast. And you're listening to it. You can't really see the source, but you hear this sound that's moving quickly that you feel might be, and it sort of feels, it sort of lands in your body in a certain way, and you have there's this sound experience. And then as you experience this sound, you might begin to label it. Well, I actually used some words that labeled it: motor, machine, right? And so maybe you begin to realize, oh, I don't see the plane, but I can hear it and I can identify it. And I know that the source probably is a plane. But at the beginning, I just identified it as this sort of long, low frequency, buzzy sound that sort of emerged gradually and then got very loud as it came above my head, and then it decayed, faded away, and so then you're thinking about this sound as this object that as a sound. It's hard to explain, but it's it's not necessarily attached. It's independent from its source. You're listening to the traits of a sound rather than, oh, look, there's the plane, right? You're really honing in on the traits or the characteristics of the sound. And that's a
So it's
certain
sorry.
kind of listening. Yeah.
Like, is like I'm hearing a dog barking compared to I'm hearing this sound. I'm hearing this sound versus I'm hearing a dog barking.
Mhm.
I'm hearing this sound compared to I'm hearing a a a plane fly by.
Mhm. Yeah, and it also is referring to what you mentioned earlier around listening to the voice, to the words, rather than listening to the meaning and the words, you're listening to the flow or the phrasing or the intonation or the pitch dropping and rising. You're listening to the inflection points or the accents and the consonants or the vowels and the softness or the harshness of the voice, right? So there's this kind of attention to the sound, right? To expression, to sound as an expression. And this for a coach, for a person who is listening to themselves or a person listening to someone else. These are the additional ways of listening, not just to the words and the meaning attached to the words, but the way in which something is being spoken or how we're being spoken to. I mean, sometimes you get a sense there's that discrepancy, right? You get a sense of the way someone is speaking to you or at you. They might be
Mm.
saying something kind of nice that out of context might sound nice, but it doesn't feel nice. It feels like aggressive so there's this way of like listening to the whole of the environment, right? Or to nature or to other people, to the creaks and sounds of the building or to nature itself, right? And so that's another kind of listening modality that's added to, right, the semantic, the meaning of it.
Wait, the modality being what is expressed in the sound? Is that what you were just referring?
Um, of paying attention to how something is expressed and how it feels to you.
How is it expressed? How a sound is expressed and how it feels to you.
Hmm. That's one way of thinking about how I approach deep deeply listening. It's not necessarily deep listening as a practice, like Pauline, Ione, and Eloise have done, but it's a way of it has that practice has inspired the way or motivated or informed the way that I'm listening to my environment, right?
Yeah, I are you talking about um checking um paying attention to your experience
Hmm.
uh from whatever you're hearing or listening to? Like you're hearing and listening to something and you're paying attention to other aspects of your experience as that is happening,
Sure.
emotional response, physical sensations,
Hmm.
images, thoughts
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
that arise in response to what you're listening to.
Hmm.
Okay, okay.
Hmm.
Which is getting back to the what is bare hearing, right? Bare listening versus
Hmm.
the okay. I would love to hear more about, well, the example that comes to mind is going to a concert or that you really like, or but anything that you have on how to listen or how to enjoy or what to do when you're, I'm not sure exactly what I'm kind of groping around, but it could be at a concert. It could be you're not at a concert. You're just hearing traffic or the dogs or trees blowing in the wind. But what does one do with that as it? Okay, so one thing you've said so far is write down all the things you're hearing.
Right.
Oh, I could ask, why do that, Jane? Why should I do that? So that's one question. Another question is, what else can I do with all this coming at me? Yeah.
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 Well, why is it important? I guess it's to see or to I'm using the word see, a visual word, but I guess it's to notice and determine where our listening stops or where it is expanded and to explore how, what are we attracted to in our listening? And one of the things that we can do once we have this list, for example, it's fun to sort of just take a look and notice all of the things that are in your environment. You might find you're surprised by how many things you can actually list. When
Mm,
initially you thought, well, this is going to be easy. There's only two things going on in my environment, right? I only hear the refrigerator humming and my neighbor's music through the wall. Like I can't hear anything else. But then once you really start you know, really asking yourself and taking the time to be present, you may start to notice, well, actually, my stomach just growled. Okay, well, stomach, oh, I just heard that dog bark. Oh, there was that bird. Oh, actually, my refrigerator stopped humming. Now it's humming again, right? And this basically what this does is it gives us a heightened sense of consciousness and a heightened sense of awareness of of where we are in this moment. And that is just a really wonderful practice in general to have. It's just a practice.
Yeah.
Um, just being present in this moment now is partly what I think a lot of what OI is about. It's cultivating this presence, this awareness, while also non-efforting, right? It's cultivating both sides, it's holding
No.
all of these truths really simultaneously, and building that capacity for being present in this moment now. And we can do that through our listening and through our awareness. One
Uh,
of the
oh, thank you. I do want you to continue on that. And I wanted to make a sidebar comment on organic intelligence here. Um, so organic intelligence, if the audience knows something about it, you probably know it's big on not exposing yourself to too much intensity,
right.
not exposing yourself to too much intensity. That's one of the fundamentally distinctive traits
Yeah.
of organic intelligence compared to other approaches, which makes it special because it's less likely to harm you.
Right.
And so you want to not expose yourself to too much intensity. Now, orientation in organic intelligence, according to organic intelligence, which is connection to the environment through the senses, that's orientation. Orientation tends to settle intensity because for many people, interior intensity, emotion, feelings, thoughts, and images can tend to be really high. So if attention can get to the environment and register the environment through one or more of the five senses, that tends to be less intense and therefore and has the effect of settling interior intensity. So orientation, as a rule of thumb, is an intensity reducer, which is uh, one of its major values according to organic intelligence. Orientation is in general an intensity reducer. That said, technically, it does increase intensity because if you open your eyes, you're receiving more. If you pay attention to your listening, you're hearing more. If you're touching more things around you, if you're smelling more, that's more input and more intensity. So orientation technically increases intensity. The reason it's regarded as an intensity reducer overall is that that intensity is in general, not all the in general, rule of thumb, far less intense than your interior intensity and therefore a driver of reduced intensity overall. I just want to make that point about organic intelligence. And Jane referred to expanding capacity in hearing, right? Which is very worthy and it can be awesome and pleasurable. And from an organic intelligence perspective, it would be do it when it's enjoyable, do it when it's comfortable, but don't just try to, well, I'm just gonna hear as much as I can, even if I get really anxious and overwhelmed, right? So when you right, that's yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because we are our bodies, we need to exclude sounds when they are not helpful to our system, right? We need to be able to have that power and that autonomy because we can't just close our ears, right? We can't just, there's no flap there like our eyelids, like there's nothing there. It's just we're always
Yeah.
able, well, abled bodied hearing, even when we're sensing it with feeling, it's there, right? We can feel sound, right? The vibration. So we can't always just turn it off. So how do we provide that safety, that place of how do we make it so that we don't when it's not the right moment, when it's not feeling good, how do we find that way to close that off or protect ourselves in some way? And so this is a question, how do we do that? And in some ways it's that channel, that mixing board I was telling you about, where we have some channels up and some channels down. It's that focusing, that intentional focusing on other sounds or intentional awareness of something else that will allow for the other thing to go off into the background, right? So I think it's important that we understand the value of our autonomy to be able to develop this capacity, is another kind of capacity developing of how we, protect ourselves through our listening as well and
Yeah.
hearing. Yeah.
May I continue riff on that? Yes. So I
Yeah.
think I'm really appreciating this conversation, by the way. It's very pleasurable and just there's a lot of intellectual stimulation happening, a lot of questions I'm thinking about. Um, here, okay. You might think that organic intelligence would say seeing more is better, hearing more is better. Uh, you could say yes as a rule of thumb without getting too detailed. As a rough simplification, yes, because the more you have access to orientation, the in general, the more settled you'll be intensity wise. At the same time, as we're talking, as Jane and I were talking about in the moment, hearing more can be too intense,
Mhm.
and I have in mind here examples of some people may have very compromised in capacity for information and intensity processing, and often here due to I'm going to use the word traumas. Let's say that a lot of things happen. They have reduced capacity, and one one manifestation of the reduced capacity is that there's a lot they don't hear. Like when they're in social situations, they just don't hear what people are saying, and that can have protective value because it's protecting their compromised capacity from being overwhelmed,
Yeah.
jacked up beyond capacity.
Yeah.
So, so hearing less and seeing less and feeling less tactilely through tactile oriented. Wow. Okay. This in the very much in the moment. I'm trying to juggle some stuff. Being less, having less connection to the environment. I guess you could say being less oriented. I'm not going to shoot myself in the foot here. Being less oriented could have value because you're reducing input. You're hearing less. You're seeing less, and that has protective value. At the same time, rule of thumb is seeing more and hearing more is good as rule of thumb according to organic intelligence because overall and in general, it's much less intense and much more pleasant and neutral than people's interior experience much of the time. And one more example that I'll give. So if you're in a social situation, here's a common thing. People tune other people out or stop listening and stop hearing what someone is saying. And then the other person shames them. You're not listening to me. You're not hearing what I'm saying. Okay, this is getting very context sensitive, but in many cases, it's a good thing that you tune them out or that you're not hearing what they're saying. It's a good thing for your well-being because your
Mhm.
system is protecting yourself
Mhm.
from intensity going too high and uncomfortable.
Sure.
So uh, if you have the premise, well, to be a good human being, I have to be present with everyone all the time and listen and hear. Well, coming from my Ayn Rand pro selfishness perspective, that's bullshit according to my. But even if you're not, if you even if you're not a lover of Ayn Rand, just comments people will say,
Mhm.
if you have some regard for your own well-being,
Mhm.
then you shouldn't be thinking, well, the more I listen to people, the more I'm present all the time, the better. I mean, you have to protect yourself, and your system can
Yeah.
do that by limiting your hearing. Okay,
Yeah.
that's okay. I'm gonna stop for now and just Jane take over if you however you want.
No, this is all so, so important. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
so vital that we understand that especially like what I'm saying is not that we're supposed to be doing one thing or another. It's
yeah.
it's really this question of play.
Mm,
It's a question of curiosity and a question of play and a question of like what ifs, lots of what ifs, and it's a lot of wonder. What does it mean to be deeply listening? And what does it mean to be actively and attentively listening? And who are we actively paying attention to? And to ourselves is really the key, I think, to listening to what you need right now and what what your body is doing and how it's reacting and acknowledging the wisdom that's contained in the body. And if it's reacting a certain way and your brain is like, don't do that, maybe your brain, maybe we need to listen to the body and let the brain quiet and go with the body. So a lot of what I do is inviting expression in lots of different ways through um, movement practices, through sounding practices, nonverbal, but sounding, um, humming. Um, you asked, what do we do with this list, or what do we do when we're in a place and we're doing this active, listening? What do we work with that? And it depends, of course, on the situation, but maybe you're taking a walk and you're hearing and your ears are attracted to a sound and you follow the sound, and the sound is a bird and it's in a tree and it's just doing its thing. How might we connect? Use that wonderful word. How might we connect? Right? Maybe we connect by singing along.
Mm.
Like maybe we decide we want to just make sounds, or maybe we decide we want to move, or maybe we decide we want to just stay still and take it in, or maybe we want to express it in a poem, or maybe we want to draw it out in a drawing or something else, right? But the idea that we can find these ways of expressing ourselves, expressing our connection, is something that I'm really fascinated by. I'm curious about it. I'm curious about how do we facilitate other people to find ways to express themselves beyond just words, or beyond yeah, just
Mm.
in other ways. And so sounding and moving and drawing and and dancing or whatever are other ways that we can become, in a sense, a listening body. It just kind of keeps, it's like the fractal, right? Kind of keeps happening when we keep letting things happen and we keep allowing for places of expression and play and curiosity to be welcomed in. And that's kind of what I'm doing. I mean, that's what part of what my practice is about, and why I do that through the listening. You can do it in other ways, but my practice is really focused on sounding and listening.
That's interesting. Right. So these common values of more happiness, more well-being, more expansion, more being in touch with your feelings, more being able to express what you want to express, and you're trying to access or get promote those values through the hearing and listening as
Mhm.
an entry point for outward exploration.
Yeah,
Um,
beautiful. Yeah.
yes, and very ambitious, and that can require a lot of capacity for intensity, right? Because you have to be able to hear and listen and connect with your body and sensation and thoughts and images, which is high capacity requirement for a lot of that growth. I mean, assuming you're going to do it pleasurably, organic intelligence.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the whole point is play and accessing that play and that playful part, the almost the childlike part. And of course, with different people and different situations, you might need to narrow it down a little bit, right? You might need to for some people, what I do are blind sound walks, where we put these mindfolds on people where they can have their eyes open, but they have this blindfold over their eyes. And we train other people to help them, guide them through touch and listening and walking in spaces that are safe, and exploring the world, without, with the sensory, with the sight deprivation, and just allowing people to explore through other ways, as long as it's safe and people agree to do it, and they know they're okay being touching someone else and following them on their shoulder or whatever. But there's ways to um, explore without there's ways to build the capacity without overstimulation in the meantime, right? So I think it's
Oh,
a matter of helping,
yes.
people bring that in.
Thank you. When you said overstimulation, the question got triggered. Um, Someone comes to you and says, Jane, my problem is basically all noise annoys me, bothers me, causes me anxiety. It's all overstimulating. I want to be where there's less noise, ideally no noise. That's interesting. The word noise, that just came up to me, that noise, what is noise? But maybe you'll have something to say. So do you have anything to say to that person? Very opposite of what of your ideal client, I guess, the what the or but any helpful advice for that person?
Well, that's a really complicated
Mm,
situation because, you know, I think it's more than just, in that case, it might just be more than the noise. That's the so-called problem. I mean, it might be that there's something else going on for that person that it's reflected in noise and the, overstimulation of it. One thing that I have done for myself that's worked for me in situations where I was really uncomfortable, I was very I'll just say that I was in the hospital in the ICU unit, for example. And there's beeps and blips and noise machines, and the light, there's too much light, and there's people yelling down the hall. And it's very, very not a great place to be,
yeah.
especially when you're not feeling well. So what I did to help me was I put my hand near my throat, kind of on my collarbone, and I hummed to myself.
Mm,
And I couldn't really hum very well, but I made the effort of kind of just, this kind of humming, you know, and it really doing it for just a few minutes. And even when I couldn't really vocalize, I just even imagining the humming and what it felt like and the vibrational feedback I got was so soothing. And it was such a automatic sense of almost immediate, gratification. It's almost like having the cat purring on your lap or something. It was like something about
mm,
sensing that vibrational energy that came from me helped me like calm right away in my environment. And nothing changed in my environment. And I had no control over my environment. But I did have control over how I was um, kind of living in that moment, that experiencing that environment. I had control over me and my place in it and my relationship to it, and really realizing that within me, I had that resource that was calming. So I don't know if that would help someone else in their situation. I
yeah.
might, I might then ask them, like, would you like to try it? Are you curious about it? Like, would that be something that you even might consider thinking about eventually trying? Like, you don't even have to try it right now, like maybe in the future, or, just giving them the autonomy, the stewardship of just what might be a possibility for finding your own resources,
Mm,
right? Finding that access point to you, to what you already have within you. You have sound, you're made of sound, you imagine sound, you can make certain kinds of sounds. You are a vibrational sound being, right? And so within you, you have all of this resource. I might even invite them to get a tuning fork and sound a tuning fork every now and then. Or I might invite them to play a drum and just see what it feels like to just play on a drum. You don't have to play it like there's no right or wrong, there's no technique involved. You can just, whack a thing. And even in our kitchen, in our very own kitchen, we have metal bowls that we use for mixing. Maybe find some kind of a mallet or something to gently hit it with it and just listen to it as it vibrates and feel it vibrating. Put a little water in it and hear it go wah, wah, wah. Like
You know,
all of, playfully inviting people to explore the objects in their environment as well as their own bodies as sources of sounding and sound healing. People talk about sound healing and sound baths and all that, but you have it all within you, right?
I, yeah, what's coming up for me is it's almost like, okay, the idea is hearing is in between seeing and touching in terms of challenge or difficulty. That's the raw idea. I'm talking through what I have in mind. I think for most people, seeing is the easiest of the five senses to orient with, and followed by hearing, I think, for most people. And then touching is often uncomfortable for many people because touch is associated with all these things that can trigger discomfort. So if the idea of practicing tactile orientation may be discomforting, it just seems to me right now that hearing could be a safer entry point to touching, assuming someone genuinely interested in pleasurably pursuing tactile orientation. One way there might be hearing because there's vibration and there's things happening in the body when you hear music or when you hear yourself. Or can you try to make a funny noise? Will you feel weird if you make a funny noise, or tap different objects and see what they sound like? It seems people could do that without too much discomfort, and maybe try to find pleasure in it, and then as a possible gateway to getting more towards tactile orientation if that's what interests them. That, yeah,
Mhm.
that's all I had.
Yeah. Yeah, the touch is really there's this wonderful radio lab called Sound is Touch at a di or Touch at a Distance or something. And I wish I looked it up before I got on this call, but it came out like in 2008 or 9 or something, maybe even earlier. And it's a podcast, the Radio Lab, one of their episodes where they talk about sound is touch at a distance, right? That they even talked about the lullaby or the voice, and how impactful the voice is, and sort of researching language and whatever language you're speaking, comfort and sweetness almost always sounds like this. Ah, ga 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 da 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 da. This very soft la da 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 da. This little lilting, and anger and scolding children is more like da 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 da. Right? And so they're
Uh,
talking about, the way that sound, how it lands or how it feels, the voice in certain languages and or certain tones and intonations of it. Um, but also how, sound can feel, you can feel sound a lot of times, right? Or people hear something and they're like, I can't stand that sound. It hurts.
mm.
Um, so I do, or that's so soothing and I feel so relaxing for me. So I think one of the things that I don't know, I would say as a suggestion, I don't know, is to find sounds that are pleasing to you. Just today. Like tomorrow they might not be so pleasing, but today, what are what are the sounds that you're hearing that just give you some joy, they give you a nice deep breath. That just, yeah, that really feels good, right? And just finding, or even neutral. We start with neutral, right? Like, what's a sound that I'm just kind of just neutral with, right? And moving gradually into a sounds that feel like comforting or sound that feels like you can just wrap it around you and feel safe and and good, you know. So
That's
what are those sounds? What are those sounds and how can you nurture your environment in the way that will help you feel that support, like using sound and listening as again another resource, a sound outside of you. It could be a sound within you, like the humming, could be something else.
that's yes, that's a very organic intelligence themed practice, looking for pleasure and neutral in sound. Nice. So if someone's going to practice, so you pay attention to what you're hearing and listening to, what's neutral, what's slightly more pleasurable than neutral. And here, this is advanced training. This could be advanced training in low intensity pleasure, like experiencing the low intensity pleasure range and
Mhm.
getting fine within that range. This is slightly more pleasurable, slightly less pleasurable, but it's very close to neutral.
Mhm.
Can you find some neutral in the traffic? Can you find some pleasure in the traffic? Can you
Yeah.
find, is it
Yeah.
right, right? Coming at it from neutral pleasure,
Yep.
hunt for it in sound.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, so do you have more? So hunting for neutral and pleasure in sound. Any
Yeah.
more off the cuff of what to look for in sound if someone wants to practice listening?
What to listen for in our
Yeah.
listening practice.
Oh, I said look for, yeah, listen, yeah.
What to listen for.
Staccato versus legato or
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes, of course. Like, smooth when sounds enter and exit,
hmm.
fade in and fade out, or if they are very, you know, entering very, like we say, staccato or very abrupt sounds, high sounds like high frequency sounds that are long versus low frequency sounds that are long, um, sounds that are very, 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 very far away, and sounds that are right near you, that distinguishing sounds that are, I love describing sounds like I might food or clothing or a texture or fabric. So like sounds that are crunchy,
Hmm.
sounds that are smooth and silky like chocolate, or sounds that are yeah, crispy or spicy, or sounds that are have little edges to them, like just imagining sound as texture, right? We talk about timbre in sound. When we talk about timbre, we talk about the color of a sound. It could have a range. A lot of people have synesthesia. And so they're experiencing sound, they're also experiencing colors, right? Or they're literally like feeling it on their body. Like, people with synesthesia, um, need to feel sound or need to recognize that it's perfectly normal to have these multiple sensorial experiences at simultaneously, right? And so, maybe we draw a sound, maybe you draw it with different colors, or maybe you draw it, maybe there's different, again, welcoming all the different ways that we're experiencing our environment through the receiving of vibrations, right?
Thank you. Do you have what sounds do people tend to find pleasurable? Do you have off the cuff categories or examples in mind that could prime people? Oh, Jane said bowling balls sound pleasurable to people. I'll pay attention. Or that was just a totally random, but But are there particular sounds that in general people find pleasurable that you could name that could guide them in their practice? Um,
Yeah, again, it's a very personal thing because again, it's cultural and environmental and belief
mm,
systems. So, for some people, hearing the sound of wind traveling through trees can be the leaves can be very relaxing. There's a lot of gentle winds. I have a neighbor who has a wind chime that's going off right now. I really enjoy it. Some people really enjoy listening to the sound of their own breathing, and some people don't. But one way, if you do like listening to the sound of your own breath, you can amplify that sound by covering over your ears and just listening to your
mm.
own breathing. Um, some people really enjoy listening to their heartbeat. Some people enjoy listening to the again the dry leaves sort of blowing in the wind. Birds, people love birds. Many people love the sound of birds. So I think it's finding what it is that again that place of neutral to pleasure that you really enjoy. Maybe it's a favorite song. Maybe it's an actual music, a piece of music. We haven't really talked much about that, but I encourage people to listen to music too and to sounds that make them feel good, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so in that regard, in music. So yeah, I think it could even be something as mundane as the refrigerator humming. Like, you know, there's so many different ways that we can enjoy
No,
and
yeah.
and find that pleasure. And like you said, when you start analyzing with this kind of more reduced listening process, this acousmatic listening, you mentioned the sound of traffic. That can be very, very annoying for people. But as soon as you start to really, I found this with some people and myself as well. When I'm listening to it, I find, oh, there's a rhythm. There's this pulse that happens. It's actually kind of beautiful. I don't, that's funny that I'm saying that. It's like, you might get surprised by by really just listening to the distinct traits or the elements of the sound and parsing out, all of the different qualities of it. You might start to hear things in a totally different way that might surprise you.
Yeah. Traffic sounds like wa ocean waves to me, actually. So yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I asked for examples. If you have, by the way, if you have more, please list them, just to give the audience as many examples as possible in case it primes them for noticing these in their lives and possibly getting pleasure from them. So if right now more examples come to mind,
Yeah.
I mean, refrigerator opening is nice, so I like that. So
Yeah, like footsteps. If you go and you take a walk, noticing the different textures and how they change the sound as you walk on different surfaces, right? So different on grass, different on marble, different on concrete, different kinds of concrete,
um,
different kinds of surfaces that you're walking on, and even within your own home, taking a walk inside of your own home and walking slowly and just listening to your own footsteps can be a very relaxing thing to do. Um, hmm.
mm.
There's writing, like writing on paper. There's the sound of drawing and the sound of doodling. And there's something very mesmerizing around taking a pen or paper, a pen or a pencil, and just drawing and doodling, and you can hear that sound. That's a sound. That's a really cool sound.
Thank you. Thank you for more examples. Do you have anything to say about silence and hearing silence?
Well, there's no such thing as silence.
There's no such thing as silence.
Yeah, anybody who knows me knows that is a John Cage
Oh,
statement.
sorry.
So yeah, John Cage. So yeah, musician composer who went into an anechoic chamber, a chamber that is the kind of room in which all sounds are absorbed. There is no sound in an anechoic chamber. And he walked into this chamber and came out and said, I hear two sounds. I hear a high pitched sound and a low pitched sound. And the engineer said, That's impossible. You can't hear any sound. There's no sound in that room. Any possible sound gets absorbed. He's like, I definitely heard these two sounds. The guy was like, Well, I think it was you. I think you heard your nervous system and your pulse, your what's the other system? The bloodstream system, the your bloodstream. So you heard these two sounds, but they were coming from you. And John Cage said, Well, there you go. There's no such thing as silence. Right. So that's the story behind that
Oh
phrase.
yeah. I hear you. You gave a literal answer, which I appreciate. I was thinking of people who, well, one possible person I was thinking of is they don't like quiet.
Right.
And any tips for them? They would like to like quiet, but they don't like it, so they always have to have noise on or
Hmm.
sounds. Is that
Yeah.
just a, well, as you just listen to things and as you find neutral and pleasure, you may just get better and better at finding the neutral in quieter
Mhm.
sound and less noisy environments, and maybe expand your capacity for quieter and quieter. That's what I meant by silence. Yeah. But I
Yeah.
appreciate the technical answer, literal answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've met a lot of people, especially people who live in large cities like New York. New York City is a very noisy area and city, and I have met plenty of people who have trouble sleeping in a quiet, nature setting because they just get freaked out. They're like, I can't sleep because it's too quiet, you know. They're just used to the stimulation of sound. And I don't, I mean, that's fine. I think that, there's no judgment around what we're used to or what we are what around all of that. But I do think that if someone wants to get used to quieter environment or a an environment where they feel more relaxed around the quietness, I think it probably, like most things, needs to be titrated and just little by little. Maybe just if you need to have white noise on or you need to have sounds going, just try lowering the sound just a tiny bit, the volume, and just see what happens. Maybe just for 2 minutes, and then put it back where you feel comfortable again. So I think it's that little by little, if that's something that you want and you feel like it's important for your life and your well-being, that you need to be used to or have that capacity for more quietness, maybe just try it little by little, lowering volumes, putting on different kinds of sounds, and just little by little.
Yeah, I think just over some themes here are follow common sense, follow trial and error, follow neutral, follow pleasure, follow what's easier to orient with.
Yeah.
If if you don't if it's unpleasant or impossible to orient through hearing, don't do it for now. Just focus on the other senses.
Yeah.
But this resource is here when you need it, and the point was to get deep into auditory orientation. I wrapping up then. Your Jane's information will be in the description. Links to her offerings, all that will be in the description. Um, any last words? Possibly, why, Jane, do you gravitate to hearing so much? What's so special about it, as a possible in your last words? But any last words or anything for the audience? Yeah.
Yeah, I think besides all the things that you mentioned, I also invite people to play, to be playful and to, just inspire the curiosity in us, the wonder. Um, and for me, I'm a musician. I don't remember when I wasn't a musician. I love sound. Sound is my friend. And
Sounds
listening is the way that I orient into the world. It's the way that I explore and wonder and play with the world. And I'm fascinated by sounds, and there's so much there. There's so much wisdom in sound, in the sounding world around us. It's all vibration and it's all about vibration. And so for me, it's connecting to these different vibrating sources that are all around us and playing with that and exploring that. And I guess just using that as my resource for anchoring me and grounding me, and again, knowing when
Mm.
to turn it off, knowing when to use it um, to help me be in the world and be a good person and a generous person and a person who has the capacity to also help others. So that's why I explore sound.
Thank you. Just occurred to me that in natural sounds, there's often change, and that might make it easier for people to orient because they can, oh, it's changing, it's changing. That may be easier for some than I'm just looking at my room, but everything's still.
Hmm.
So the dynamic quality of natural sounds could make orientation easier.
I
Uh,
love that you mentioned that,
yeah,
and I totally forgot about that evolution, that ever evolutionary process of sounding. It's always moving. It's always moving
motion,
through time. Yeah, it's always in motion.
right.
Hmm.
Jane Rigler, organic intelligence practitioner, deep listening practitioner, retired professor of music. Reach out to her for all your auditory needs and healing through auditory orientation impulses. Um, Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Bach. Thank you so, so much.
This was a pleasure. Thank you.
Super pleasure for me. Thank you.